Jaya Radha So from Srila Prabhupada. One of Prabhupada's leading disciples, Kalandara, came to visit him in Geneva. Kalandara had left the movement 4 months before, being unable to follow strictly the 4 regular principles. Up to that time, he had been the leading manager of ISKCON in the United States, and Prabhupada depended heavily on him to deal with Nippon printers, to coordinate book distribution, and to collect funds from all the temples in the US. Since leaving, Kalandara had felt great remorse and had had a change of heart, and had telegrammed Prabhupada that he wanted to come and surrender at his lotus feet once again. Srila Prabhupada had welcomed him back, and Kalandara had flown immediately to Geneva. After speaking for a few hours with Kalandara, Prabhupada decided he would be just the man to take up the heavy responsibilities of GBC of India. He should make his headquarters in Bombay and help the devotees there get the No Objective certificate. It was a bold move for Prabhupada based on trust in his disciple and on the immediate need for Krishna consciousness leadership in India. He had his secretary immediately type a letter to the leaders of the temple in Hyderabad, Bombay, Calcutta, Mayapur, Delhi, and Vrindavan, authorizing Kalandara's appointment as the new governing body commissioner for India. It is a great relief for me, wrote Prabhupada. Please give them all cooperation and work together for the advancement of our mission to make the people of India Krishna conscious. Srila Prabhupada, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 1, entitled The Activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. And it's text 28. Anyasyam api jayayam traya putra asan utamas tamaso raivata iti mantvantara dipataya. Anyasyam api jayayam traya putra asan utamas tamaso raivata iti manvantara dipa pataya. Anyasyam api jayayam traya putra asan utamas tamaso raivata iti manvantara dipi pataya. Anyone else like to try?
Anyasyam api jayayam traya putra asan utamas tamaso raivata iti manvantara dipa pataya.
Anyajam, other. Api, also. Jayayam, in the wife. Traya, 3. Putra, sons. Asan, there were. Uttama tamasa raivata. Uttama tamasa and raivata.
Uttama, Tamasa, and Rajata.
Iti,
Iti,
thus,
thus,
Anu Antara
Anurantara,
of the Manvantara millennium,
of the mountain,
Adipataya
Adipataya,
rulers.
rulers.
Translation. In his other wife, Maharaj Priyavata begot 3 sons named Uttama, Talamasa, and Raivata. All of them later took charge of Manvantara millenniums. Responsibility is in his other wife, Maharaj Priyavata begot 3 sons named Uttama, Tamasa, and Raivata. All of them later took charge of Manvantara millenniums. By Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In every day of Brahma there are 14 Manvantaras. The duration of one Manvantara, the lifespan of one Manu, is 71 yugas, and each yuga is 4,320,000 years. Almost all the Manus selected to rule the Manvantaras came from the family of Maharaj Priyavrata. 3 of them are particularly mentioned herein, namely Uttama, Tamasa, and Raivata. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this section, activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. So this is explaining how the universe is set up, how it's populated, and how there's huge expanses of time over which particular personalities rule. So interesting to contemplate, because this gives a very big picture of what's going on and helps us to appreciate how insignificant what's taking place. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? You'll see the headlines in the newspaper, fury, because Mrs. Jones can't get a cat Tiddles out of the tray, and it's a headline, it's a big thing, it's a big commotion, because they can't get Tiddles out of the tray. And 3 fire engines came, but Tiddles just wouldn't come down. And in terms of the cosmological going down of the universe, it's really not something to be too interested or preoccupied with. So in one day of Lord Brahma, there's 1,000 Kali Yugas. That's just 12 hours while he's awake, and then when he goes to sleep, everybody else goes to sleep as well. Actually, there's a partial devastation. But it's interesting, isn't it? If you think about it, this whole Kali Yuga, the whole expanse of time, it takes place 1,000 times. Satya Yuga takes place 1,000 times. The whole rotation of the Yugas, 1,000 times in just one day of Lord Brahma. So how many things do we do on a daily basis that take place 1,000 times during the day? Maybe do we breathe 1,000 times? Do we blink our eyes 1,000 times? Anyway, whatever it is you do on a daily basis 1,000 times, if you ran up to Lord Brahma and said, we can't get Tiddles out of the tray, it's not going to mean much to him, is it? Everything is very insignificant. So if we can contemplate that and how puny and tiny we are in relation, never mind in relationship to Krishna, just even in relationship to this one universe, then it can help us to become free from being too overly concerned with the small itsy-bitsy details that are going on in our lives. Try and get the bigger picture. The psychologists say that there's less chance of suicide if you can see the horizon. Have you heard that one? So if you can see the horizon, you get the bigger picture, and then things don't overwhelm you so much. So people are living in the cities, I mean, one of the places I really don't like walking around in is London, because I feel like I'm a little ant walking around in the bottom of a bowl, and the bowl is just this skyline of just massive buildings, and you're made to feel that, you know, I mean, it's interesting because we want to feel, we want this insignificant feeling in the sense that we want to be free of our pride and our false ego, but at the same time, this overwhelming sense of not making any difference to what's going on around you and of being of no consequence. It takes the very vitality out of life. So when people go for a break, when they go for a holiday, they like to get back out into nature. Anyway, the bigger the horizon, the bigger the picture we can see, the easier it is for us to deal with our problems. So it's reading these types of descriptions of what's going on, the expanses of time that are taking place, helps us to see that there'll be another Kali Yuga coming up after this one, and another one, and another one. And the same pattern will take place again. Things will build up, civilizations will build up, then they'll go down, they'll break down. There'll be Satya Yuga where things are very elevated, and it will degrade down to Kali Yuga when things become very degraded, and then it will rejuvenate back up into Satya Yuga, and then things again will continue on. So that's a nice one to tell the conspiracy theorists, because conspiracy theorists are sometimes a little paranoid with what is going on, and they don't take into account the bigger perspective, which the Bhagavatam helps us to see. And the real conspiracy theory is that it's Kali Yuga, and Kali is empowering his agents to promote illicit sex, intoxication, eating meat, and gambling. So that's what's really going on. And then who he's using, which puppets he's using to orchestrate his plans, is really a minor detail. So rather than getting caught up in the minutia of minor detail, let's try and see the bigger picture. So I can't think of very much else to say about this. If it's okay, I'll go on to the next one, unless anybody has any questions. Actually, the next one's quite a big one. Any questions about that? It's kind of straightforward, really, isn't it? Yeah.
So at the end of one Lord Brahma's days, the pure devotees, do they go back to Godhead, or they're also partially, annihilated?
Yeah, annihilated. Well, the pure devotee, however he dies, whether it's through annihilation of the whole, I mean, it describes in the second canto that as the universe is filling up with water, the sages go up into higher planetary systems, and then they go into Brahmaloka, and then they get ready to go back to Godhead. So they could do it that way. Yeah, the pure devotee is absorbed in Krishna, so wherever he goes, wherever Krishna sends him, will be Krishna's plan. He'll send him to a particular place. And then everything has to be recreated every day when Lord Brahma gets up. He's going to remake the whole universe again. So the next text 29, I'll just go through the translation. After Kavi, Mahavira, and Savana were completely trained in the Paramahansa stage of life, Maharaj Prabhupada ruled the universe for 11 Buddhas of years. Whenever he was determined to fix his arrow upon his bowstring with his two powerful arms, all opponents of the regular principles of religious life would flee from his presence in fear of the unparalleled prowess he displayed in ruling the universe. He greatly loved his wife, Vahishmati, and with the increase of days, their exchange of nuptial love also increased. By her feminine behavior, as she dressed herself, walked, got up, smiled, laughed, and glanced about, Queen Vahishmati increased his energy. Thus, although he was a great soul, he appeared lost in the feminine conduct of his wife. He behaved with her just like an ordinary man, but actually, he was a great soul. Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In this verse, the word Dharma Pratipaksha, opponents of religious principles, refers not to a particular faith, but to Varnashram Dharma, the division of society socially and spiritually into 4 varnas: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, and 4 ashrams: Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. To maintain proper social order and help the citizens gradually progress toward the goal of life, namely spiritual understanding, the principles of Varnashram Dharma must be accepted. From this verse, Maharaj Priyavata appears to have been so strict in maintaining this institution of Varnashram Dharma that anyone neglecting it would immediately flee from his presence as soon as the king warned him by fighting or administering like punishment. Indeed, Maharaj Priyavata would not have to fight, but simply because of his strong determination, they dared not disobey the rules and regulations of Varnashram Dharma. It is said that unless human society is regulated by Varnashram Dharma, it is no better than a bestial society of cats and dogs. Maharaj Priyavata therefore strictly maintained Varnashram Dharma by his extraordinary, unparalleled prowess. So I'll break off there for a minute. There's a verse referring to the sun moving out of fear of the Lord. Anyone know that verse? I'm sure we've read it. Remember that verse, Mother Brenda? The sun is moving out of fear of the Supreme Personality of God. The wind is blowing out of fear. Everything is going on.
Fire burns out of fear. I don't know.
So it's interesting that everything is going on out of fear. So fear of punishment. So therefore people conform. So interesting how that works. That if the ruler was weak, then that would be because of creating more miscreants. So because they know there's no point even trying to break the rules and regulations, or if they start to, then it's just some light punishment, and immediately they're afraid to go any further, so they stop their activities. So having strong leaders is, and the people in general being aware that if I step out of line, I'm going to be in for it. So this is a good way to maintain social order. And if people get off lightly with offences, then this creates insecurity and anxiety. The people in general don't feel protected. So the way the law stands right now is very strange. If somebody comes onto your property in the dead of night, breaks in, is carrying a lethal weapon, and he trips over your magazine stand, and he breaks his knee on the coffee table, then he can sue you for having a magazine stand in a dangerous place. Because there was one guy, actually, he got burgled, and the guy that, well, actually, he didn't manage to burgle it. It was in his factory. The guy was going to burgle him, but as he was trying to break in, he fell through the roof on top of a lathe and injured himself quite badly. And he sued the factory owner £240,000 for having a weak roof. So then we wonder why there's social unrest. How can people live peacefully when the law is actually protecting the criminal and punishing the innocent? Everything is so distorted. So we see here how, because of Maharaj Priyavata's rule, then the miscreants knew there was no point, better just be good. And that's interesting also that people may have a tendency to want to break the law, but if they're kept within a strict society, then they won't be allowed to fall prey to their lower nature. So it's kind of accepted that that's just going to, by default, by human nature, some people will want to steal and break the principles. that tendency will be there. Most citizens, of course, will be okay. They'll just be law-abiding and good people. But there will always be that bad element there. So there has to be strong rulership to safeguard against that tendency. And then that protects everyone, that even protects the people that are going to break the law, because then they think, well, no point trying to steal, I'll just get my hand chopped off. No point trying to steal somebody else's wife or do some nonsense, because it's going to be a heavy punishment. So there's a strong incentive not to break the law. So to maintain such a life of strict vigilance, one needs encouragement from his wife. In the Varnashram system, certain classes such as the Brahmins and Sannyasis do not need encouragement from the opposite sex. Kshatriyas and Grihastas, however, actually need the encouragement of their wives in order to execute their duties. Indeed, a Grihasta or Kshatriya cannot properly execute his responsibilities without the association of his wife. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally admitted that a Grihasta must live with a wife. Kshatriyas were even allowed to have many wives to encourage them in discharging the duties of government. The association of a good wife is necessary in a life of karma and political affairs. To execute his duties properly, therefore, Maharaj Priyavrata took advantage of his good wife, Bahishmati, who was always very expert in pleasing her great husband, by properly dressing herself, smiling, and exhibiting her feminine bodily features. Queen Bahishmati always kept Maharaj Priyavrata very encouraged, and thus he executed his governmental duty very properly. In this verse, Eva has twice been used to indicate that Maharaj Priyavrata acted exactly like a hen-pecked husband, and thereby seemed to have lost his sense of human responsibility. Actually, however, he was fully conscious of his position as a spirit soul, although he seemingly behaved like an acquiescent, calming husband. Maharaj Priyavrata thus ruled the universe for 11 Abhudas of years. One Abhuda consists of 100 million years. And Maharaj Priyavrata ruled the universe for 11 such Abhudas. So that's interesting, isn't it? One in an administrative role. Maybe if he was what does Prabhupada say? The Brahmins and the Sannyasis do not need encouragement, but the Kshatriyas and the Grihastas do. That's interesting. So because he'd taken on a lot of responsibility, he needed the support of his wife. And we all know what they say, don't we? Behind every great woman, behind every great man. Behind every great man is a great woman. So it works as a team. So it's good to get clear on what the Grihastha ashram was meant for in the first place. Sometimes there's been problems with marriages, and one will go to the counselor and say, well, I just don't love my wife anymore. Or she will say, I just don't love my husband anymore. So it's a misunderstanding of what love is, because love is not a feeling, it's not a sentiment. Love is a doing thing. So if you want to love somebody, then you love them by serving them, by hearing from being concerned about them, from listening to them. This is how we cultivate love. Dadati patiginati gui makti puchiti. Love is not a romantic thing, it's an exchange. You do something for them, they do something for you. You assist each other, and then the love deepens. That's what love is. Love is something which we cultivate. They say that in the West, the woman marries the man she loves, and in the East, the woman loves the man she marries. So the difference is that initially she doesn't love him when she marries him, but then she learns to love him, and he learns to love her once they're married. Whereas in the West, oh, I really love her, it was love at first sight, and then a year later, they're trying to kill each other. So this sentimental, romantic, it's an illusory, and it's not the real. The real deal is just like you learn to work with each other as a team. that you're compatible and that you help each other's weaknesses. If you're actually hindering each other and making each other's weaknesses worse, then it's a bad arrangement. It's not going to be good, because it means your devotional service will be impaired. And like here, Maharaj Priyabhakta, his ability to execute his duties as a powerful administrator, they were enhanced by the association of Queen Bahishwati. So then it works very, very nicely. One time a big king, he came back and he found his wife in bed with his servant. So he got his sword out and he was about to, and he was a bit sad because he was thinking, I really like my wife as well. But anyway, and he was a bit sad as well because it was his favourite servant. And he thought, well, anyway, I guess that's the way it goes. So he got his sword out and he was just about to chop their heads off. And then he remembered that his minister had said to him that morning, better to learn by hearing than by seeing. So he very, very gently woke the servant in. He took the servant out and he said, why are you in bed with my wife? And the servant said, oh, I'm so sorry. I normally in the evening climb into your bed to make it warm for you. And today I was working so hard for you that I fell asleep. And so the queen had just seen this person asleep with his back to her in bed, so she just thought it was the king, and she climbed into bed. And so then the king went over to his wife and he gently woke her up, and the wife was angry and she goes, oh, so now you're waking me up. First of all, you go to bed before me. You don't even wait for me to go to bed. I go to bed and there you are snoring away, and now you're waking me up. And then he realized that his wife was innocent. So then the king was really happy because he could keep his wife, and the servant was okay as well. So that's sometimes where things go wrong in relationships, is that we try to see, we try to understand by seeing, but better to try to understand by hearing. Hearing is a much more accurate method for ascertaining the actual truth. Seeing is imperfect. So we can learn to, they say the real duty of love is to listen. So we can learn to listen. If we're married, then we learn to listen to each other. And that empathy helps the person to heal, and it helps to deepen the relationship as well. So that's an important. So that's why if you chant Hare Krishna nicely, then everything else will be easy to do as well, because if you can hear the holy name, then that means you're training yourself to hear nicely. You can be attentive. And if you can hear the holy name nicely, then you'll hear everything else nicely. You'll hear the Shastras nicely, you'll hear classes nicely. You'll be able to listen nicely to your partner, to your team that you're working with, to your authorities. Everything will work so much more nicely if you can hear. Sankirtan as well, when you're doing Sankirtan, Bhakti Distribution. Bhakti Distribution is a lot easier when you can hear the people, hear what they're saying, and respond accordingly to them. They say that generally people don't listen to understand, they listen to reply. So as the person is speaking, the other person is already thinking about what his reply is going to be. So they doesn't really hear the person that's speaking. If you understand what the person is saying, then you'll know exactly what to say in response. So we have to focus all our attention in trying to understand and trying to hear. And the same with Krishna. If we can hear Krishna's holy names, then we'll understand Krishna. That's how we'll understand Krishna, by hearing him. It's such an important, and it's something which is not trained. You know, young male and females get together, and they have a completely distorted idea of what the relationship is supposed to be. And pornography doesn't help, distorts it even more. And the whole idea of the relationship in the first place is to encourage each other to produce more nicely, more efficiently. Any questions or comments? So all you ladies, be aware, if your husband is behaving like a henpecked husband, he may just be pretending to be henpecked. but secretly inside, you may just be thinking of Krishna and not thinking of you. If you love Krishna, you love everyone. If you love your wife, you may not love anyone else. But if you love Krishna, then you'll love your wife and you'll love everybody else as well. It's not exclusive. So he was fully conscious of his position as a spirit soul, although he behaved like an acquiescent, calm husband. If you go into a match,
Sure.
Funny how Prabhupada uses that expression, a calm husband. Any questions? He was very encouraged, Maharaj Pita was very encouraged by his wife, and she encouraged him by properly dressing. Interesting. If you dress nicely, that'll encourage your husband. If you're in a mess, and then that will encourage him. Smiling. So maybe you need to practice smiling, ladies. Have a look in the mirror, make sure your smile is okay. Check on your husbands. Is my smile encouraging you? Or are you smiling? Maybe you're not smiling enough. Maybe you're frowning too much. And that's discouraging you. One time Prabhupada said to this one devotee who was always really miserable, and Prabhupada said, I order you to be happy. So you're, by exhibiting your feminine bodily features, so that's interesting because the feminine bodily features, generally they're used to entice and entrap the opposite sex, but they can be used to encourage. So she kept Maharaj Prabhupada very encouraged, and he executed this. So Prabhupada says also in the Krishna book, he mentions that the husband and wife, they go through so many difficulties during the day, but in the evening they exchange some joking words, and this keeps them going. Interesting, helps you to endure the burden of all the different difficulties and responsibilities that you're having to go through. If you can have that exchange, that humorous exchange. So he only pretended to be henpecked. Acquiescent. You know what the word acquiescent is? To acquiesce, means to agree or to be submissive. So it's interesting, isn't it, how they have these ideas, they do these science fiction movies, and they go to another planet, and the guy's purple, and he's got 3 heads, and he talks through his elbow, and they have this idea that, well, okay, it's maybe like this on this planet, but it's probably completely different on another planet, in another universe. But it's interesting, isn't it, that this kind of domestic dynamic is a universal principle. I was reading about psychology actually, and sometimes what this counselor would do to help women that had been raped, he would play the rapist and role play so that she could then forgive him, So he would say things, and then sometimes the person who was counseling would say, that's exactly what the rapist said, you seem to understand him so well. And he makes the point that actually I'm the same person. So the way we are, our needs, and the way we are as a person, that's a universal principle. Whether you're Maharaj Priyavata living for 1100 million years, or whether you're Fred Jones living for 70 years, it's still the same thing. You have a head with 2 shoulders either side, and you're like the sky blue with white clouds, the grass is green, the cows make milk. It's the same, it's a universal principle everywhere, in the spiritual world, in high planetary systems. And this dynamic of the male and female encouraging each other so that their duties can be executed nicely. So that's the reality. Any questions or comments? Maybe I can ask a question. So if this is the case, it seems like it's quite a straightforward thing. Why do you think we struggle so much in this age to maintain the marriage situation? And I mean, the divorce rate was in America 50%. I'm not sure what it is now. I couldn't see it getting any better. Why is it so? Why it seems so simple? All she has to do is smile nicely, dress nicely, and exhibit her feminine bodily features, and then her husband will be encouraged, and he will go out to work and do a good day's work, and at night they can have a couple of little jokes together, and then everything should be fine. Why is it so difficult for people to just stay with the one partner?
They don't value, they're not committed. They don't, it's become very cheap.
Yeah. And like a
fishes in the sea sort of thing, you know, so they don't.
Yeah,
it's impersonal as well.
You know Tony Benn, he was, I don't think he was ever a leader, but he was Labour politician. So when he first got married, his father said something to him, which he never forgot. He said, right now you're feeling a lot of love for your wife. He said, you need to put it in a bank, because you'll need to make some withdrawals later on. He said, you'll have to put it in the bank, because you'll need to make withdrawals later on. So later on, you may not be feeling so much love, you see, and you'll have to look back on the times that you did and maybe make a withdrawal. So certainly it helps if we have a little bit of understanding of how psychology works, and we can understand each other's natures a little bit, and that can be very helpful. If we don't understand, see, people are very confused, and one of the reasons why marriages are not working is because people don't understand who they are. You know, they're changing sex. They're not sure of their own identity. What am I supposed to? What's my role as a woman? What part am I supposed to play? And what is my role as a man? What part am I supposed to play? The roles are becoming very confused, you know. So if you're in a drama and you're not quite sure what your role is, and then they say, okay, action, okay, come in, you know, and he's supposed to be the hero, and you know, the knight comes in on the horse with his lance, and he says, oh dear, my armor's looking so dirty, I should have polished my armor. And he gets down, he starts polishing it, and then they're like, psst, psst, you're not supposed to be saying, you're supposed to be really heroic, say something really powerful. And then the wife comes in and, wow, that was a good workout at the gym. What are you doing, you big pansy? Where's my dinner? Have you made it yet? No, you're supposed to be asking for a flower. So nobody quite knows what they're supposed to be doing or what the role is supposed to be. And because it has been abused, the femininity of the woman has been abused and exploited, then it's difficult for her to behave as she wants to in case she gets taken advantage of. So the man has to be the genuine article. He has to be doing all the manly things, protecting the woman, giving her security, going out and doing his bit, and then she will be able to behave. Or if it turns out that the man is more of a feminine nature, then he has to do that, maybe he has to clean. And if the woman is more of a masculine nature, then she has to go out and the crust of bread. The question is just knowing what our nature is, and then finding somebody who's going to be compatible with that nature, because you will find, even if there is same-sex relationships, one of them is feminine more, and one of them is more masculine, because that's the way the dynamic works. Whether they're both female, whether they're both male, that's the way it functions. You know? One takes the lead, one is submissive.
So this is more marvelous, maybe a couple of 100 years ago, because the wife or females used to always stay in the house, and men would always go outside and work and do physical stuff. And whereas nowadays they could have the same job, it's very much kind of merged in.
Yeah.
There's no kind of
Distinction.
yeah. So,
Yeah, so it only works if the women don't become exploited. If they're saying we want equal rights, and the men are saying, oh yeah, okay, then you can have equal rights. You can go into bars and you can be unprotected just the same as the men are. So it becomes a way of exploiting the women. But if the men are saying that they're going to protect, then they can't abuse that. So it's a very, very awkward situation. But we can clarify and we can understand our natures, and then we can behave appropriately with each other. But this is a nice little glimpse into how a very dynamic couple work. You know, Mars Priyavati is so powerful. The criminals were even scared to try anything in his presence. He was so powerful, and at the same time, he was so like henpecked with his wife. So very, very powerful on the outside, but very soft on the inside. So that's an essential part of how we function in human life, is that if we're sannyasi or we're Brahmin, maybe then obviously then it's different, but for the general, most people aren't like that. So they need to feel that they have some loving relationship, someone who's going to encourage them, and then that gives them the strength and the confidence to take on responsibilities and difficulties.
You're talking about when women get exploited because man's not protecting them. And I was just wondering, sometimes like a woman gets the blame, like, oh, she was dressed in a certain way, or she was attracting attention to herself.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, what's your kind of take on that? Is it all the man's fault, or is it sometimes kind of...
Well, they have a movement in America, the right to strut like a slut. Have you seen that? Mm-hmm. So basically the woman's saying, well, I'm just going to dress the way I want, and if you've got a problem, well, then that's your problem, It's not my problem if you can't control yourself. So they're saying that they have the right to do that. Whereas it's interesting, this comedian was making a comment, he goes, well, if you see a crime, and you go running up to somebody, and he's got a uniform on, you say, officer, someone is... And the policeman says, oh, don't treat me like... Okay, so maybe I'm dressed like a police officer, but you don't have to treat me like one. So you could say to the woman, well, maybe you're not a slut, but you should dress like one. So how you dress gives a certain impression, you see. So that's why the lady would... a woman's attractive quality is her chastity. When she loses that, then the type of energy she gives out, the type of person she will attract, won't be one that's going to be conducive towards a good relationship. So she keeps herself covered, and the man becomes attracted to her. He'll become attracted to her for the right reasons, you see. Or there's more chance of it being for the right reasons. And the emphasis is too much on the bodily conception, I remember I was doing books one time at a service station on the motorway, and I went over to a car, and it was a very beautiful lady with, and all the blinds were down, the car was all dark, and I kind of tapped and looked in, and there was a guy there that had, his eyes had been melted, a bomb had gone off in his face, and it melted his eyes, and he had these like pins that were keeping the eyelids apart. And this really beautiful lady was in there. She was saying, oh, you know, he's had a bomb go off in his face. He was a soldier, and he must have been very handsome because she was really beautiful, you know. And so she still loved him, but now she had to kind of reevaluate that she loved him, the person, and not him, the body. So that was a bit of a test. There's a story as well of a prince. Once he was cast on an island, and the prince had all these beautiful wives, and suddenly he was on this island. He was with a woman who was really, really ugly, and he got to know her as the time went by, and he realized what a beautiful person she was by her nature, and he fell in love with her because she had such a beautiful nature. So we don't hear those types of stories enough. I think in society we need to emphasize that again. They say that it's become so illusory now, the form of the woman, that even the women don't look like themselves. You know, they have these like famous women on the cover of magazines, and it's not how they look, it's how they've been photoshopped to look. So that creates anxiety even for themselves because they don't even look like who they're supposed to be. Never mind anybody else, and everybody else is running around. There's a book by Dan Greenberg called How to Be Miserable, and one chapter is if you want to be really miserable, compare yourself to others. So you find the ideal man, the ideal woman, and you measure the dimensions and you compare it to your body. And then you can become really miserable by comparing yourself with others. So we want to have relationships with each other and marriages based upon who we are, not upon who we're pretending to be. And who we are, we can be the ideal person. We can be proactively. We can be considerate and kind and sensitive and high integrity and genuine. And those types of qualities are very endearing, you know. They will nourish the relationship.
So there's the lack of training in there to see every woman as their mother. And that way, it'd be easy for them to overlook how she dresses and so on, like music, it was perfect. And we just like to just think them as gopis, you know. And we see how in the past time of the inhabitants of Vrindavan throwing yogurt over each other and so reveal the form of the woman, but they weren't disturbed by only the very ghostly were disturbed by. So there's that lack of training because and also the intelligence has been dulled. It's like, you know, there's women are classes everywhere, but it still doesn't think that one day that's someone's mother or someone's daughter or someone's sister. You know, so if they're conscious that way, they would be kind of up in arms. But because they're just dulled, their brains are dulled by the fashion industry kind of displaying the female form, I think it's overwhelming that the intelligence is lost.
It's interesting because in the Vaishnav system, the male would be trained for 25 years in celibacy, strict celibacy, wouldn't even know what a woman looked like. And in some cases, apart from husband's mum, but if he was living with the guru, there's one story of a brahmachari, and he was enticed eventually by smell or taste, but he didn't know what a woman was. He went back and said, I've just seen a brahmachari with two bumps on his chest. And then he had to tell him that's actually a female. But so there was that strict training, and then for 25 years. So what happens? We have people come and join, and they maybe not have such a good training, and they join, and they're not going to get 25 years training. They'll maybe only a brahmachari for a couple of years, and then they get married. So they've got to be so careful because the momentum of the past bad habits, unless they're very diligent, are going to sweep them along,
Nice.
I was just going to ask, do you think there is enough training in this one? Because still, you know, like, even within the society, like, women are exploited, sadly.
Yeah.
Even by men that have been around,
Yeah.
you know, in the wild.
There's no rehearsal training. Because the woman thinks the man should be like Lord Rama, and the man thinks the woman should be like Sita, rather than each trying to emulate them into themselves. So,
Yeah, so I would encourage, personally, from my own experiences, that the longer you can stay in full-time service and learn to control the senses, then the easier it is when you finally go into that type of an environment. You can be more protected by so some intense training. 5, 10, 15 years is really good, and then think about because just 2 or 3 years, it's almost second nature. It's so wired in from a very, very early age. We're brought up in mixed education and so much exposure to all the wrong types of things. So those impressions are still there. We shouldn't underestimate our previous. And initially, you can think, I've just become a devotee now. I'm initiated. All my desires have gone away. I'm pure. And then later on, you realise that they haven't. And then later on again, you realise the extent to which what you thought was gone has actually just been there under the surface, just lurking. So, ideally, if you join when you're 25, you shouldn't get married until you're 50. 25 years training. But of course, that's not really possible. But if you can join when you're 20 and get 10 years training at least, and marry when you're 30, then it's good.
There is especially in America, they've got this Grahasta vision team, and we've had great success in counseling, but they very much emphasize there needs to be premarital training before they get married, so that they know that what they're walking into and what the expectations of the other is, so that they're not, once the infatuation goes away, then left with a kind of incompatible situation.
A few years ago I was quite fanatical that we should only read Srila Prabhupada's books and anything else is bogus. And one sannyasi, initiating guru, also actually was talking in class and he was saying all these things that I'd never read in Prabhupada's books. I was asking, where's he got that from? So what's that book, Men Are From Mars and Men Are From Venus? And I thought, this is interesting. So I read that, it was interesting how the conversation goes on and the woman is speaking in one language and the man speaking in another language, and it's not actually, they're both getting the wrong impression about what each other is saying, just because they don't understand how they speak, what the meaning is behind the intention. So that was really interesting because I had some exposure to women then. I joined when I was 19, and then no real interaction with women for 20 years, and suddenly with this other species from planet Venus, and she's saying things which don't make sense, and I'm trying to say things back to her in Martian. Why are you saying we never go out? We were out just 24 hours ago. But never go out means I haven't been out for 24 hours. But it's just a very emotional way of saying it. And then the Martian is like, no, that's not logical, because there's only 24 hours, whereas never expands over hundreds of billions of years. So it's interesting that these tools can be useful. Like everything can be used in Krishna consciousness. Learning about cars, how to fix tires. It's not in Srimad Bhagavatam, but if you want to preach and you need to get from A to B, you have to learn it. And if you want to get married and make your relationship successful, then you maybe have to know something about the psychological mechanics of that dynamic so that you can encourage each other. Okay, I'll finish there. Iskam Guru Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Go Premanandi, there you go. All of you keep it. I hope that was politically correct. No, nobody seems to have freaked out anyway. Oh, we're still on probably. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.